The human fleet emerged from jump space above the Zinthri homeworld like ghosts appearing from nowhere. 150 warships, led by Admiral Lisa Carter herself aboard the newly commissioned Defender, took position in high orbit above a planet that had not seen war in 10,000 years. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant, positioned at Admiral Carter's right flank, and looked down at the world below. It was beautiful, covered in purple oceans and red landmasses, with cities visible even from orbit. Billions of Zinthri lived down there, civilians who had never expected to see enemy warships in their sky. All ships maintain formation, Admiral Carter's voice came through the com. Weapons ready, but do not lock targets. We are here to deliver a message, not to kill. The Zinthri Defense Fleet, what remained of it after months of war, scrambled to respond. 40 ships rose from the planet, positioning themselves between the human fleet and their homeworld. It was a brave gesture, but everyone knew those 40 ships could not stop the humans if they truly wanted to attack. A communication request came through. Admiral Carter accepted it, and the face of an elderly Zinthri admiral appeared on the screen. His scales had lost their luster, and his eyes showed fear mixed with determination. "Human Admiral," the Zinthri said, his voice shaking slightly, "you have come to destroy our world." "No," Carter replied calmly. "We have come to show you that we could, but we will not." There's a difference. On the planet below, civilians watched their sky with terror. They had been told for months that humans were barbaric creatures who knew only violence. They had been assured that the Council's superior forces would crush the human rebellion quickly. Now they saw human warships hovering above their cities, and they understood their leaders had been wrong about everything. Lieutenant Sophie Grant monitored the defensive positions from her station on the Valiant. "Captain, the planetary defense systems are powering up. Orbital platforms are targeting us," Jake nodded. "Expected. Do not fire unless fired upon. We are not here to start a fight." Commander Ryan Hughes had his fighter squadrons ready in the launch bays, but he hoped he would not need to use them. They had come too far, lost too many people, to throw it all away in a last battle. This had to work. In the Galactic Council chamber, every member watched the situation unfold through live feeds. The sight of human ships above the Zinthri homeworld had shocked them all into silence. For thousands of years, the Zinthri had been the Council's sword, the military force that enforced their will. Seeing them helpless now was almost incomprehensible. "They are going to bombard the planet," one council member said, his voice horrified. "Billions will die." Ambassador Kyle Preston, who had been given special permission to address the council, stood up. "No, they will not. That is the point. We are showing you what we could do, but will not do. We are showing you the restraint that civilized species should have." "Restraint?" a council member shouted. "You invade our territory and call it restraint?" "We have not invaded anything," Kyle replied coolly. "We have fought in self-defense. You declared war on us. You tried to take our colonies by force. We pushed back. And now we are here with the power to do to you what you tried to do to us, and we are choosing not to use it." Admiral Carter broadcast a message on all frequencies, one that would be heard by every Zinthri on the planet, every council member, every species watching this moment. "People of the Zinthri homeworld," she said, "my fleet has come here not as conquerors but as messengers. For 6 months we have fought your forces, we have lost thousands of our people. We have bled for our right to exist, for our right to build homes among the stars. Your leaders thought we were weak because we were young. They thought they could push us aside because they had more ships, more experience, more history." She paused, letting her words sink in. They were wrong. "We have proven that humanity cannot be stopped, cannot be intimidated, cannot be forced to submit. We stand before you now with the power to devastate your world, and we choose not to use it. We choose mercy because we are not the barbarians your leaders claimed we were. We are a civilization that values life, even the lives of those who tried to destroy us." On the planet below, millions watched and listened. Many wept. They had been told humans were monsters, but monsters did not show mercy. "Monsters did not hold back when they had the power to destroy," Carter continued. We are offering peace. Not the peace of the conquered, but the peace of equals. We will recognize your sovereignty, and you will recognize ours. We will share the galaxy with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. But if your leaders choose to continue this war, if they refuse this offer, then we will do what we must to protect our people. The choice is yours. She cut the transmission and waited. In the council chamber, chaos erupted. Some members demanded that the Zinthari defense fleet attack, that they go down fighting rather than accept this humiliation. Others argued desperately for peace, pointing out that continued war would only lead to more death and destruction. The Zinthari representative, one who had replaced Krathzar after his disgrace, stood slowly. He looked old and tired, the weight of his civilization's failure heavy on his shoulders. "We accept," he said quietly. "We accept your terms." The chamber fell silent. After a moment, other council members began to nod in agreement. The hardliners tried to protest, but their voices were drowned out. The war was over. Admiral Carter received the council's official response an hour later. She read it carefully, then broadcast to her fleet. "All ships, stand down from battle stations. Peace has been achieved. Well done, everyone. Well done." On the Valiant, Jake Morrison felt tension drain from his body. He looked around his bridge and saw his crew smiling, some crying, all relieved. They had survived, they had won. "Sophie, set course for home," he said. "I think we have been away long enough." Commander Ryan Hughes opened his cockpit canopy and climbed out, joining his pilots in the hangar bay. They embraced each other, laughing and crying at the same time. The war was over, and they had lived to see it. Colonel Ben Wallace gathered his Marines and told them the news. Tough soldiers who had faced death without flinching broke down with relief. They had fought so long, lost so many friends. Now they could finally rest. Private Danny Cruz, now promoted again to sergeant after his bravery in multiple battles, sat down and wrote one final letter to his family. "It is over," he wrote. "We won, not just the battles, but the war. We proved to the galaxy that humans are not to be underestimated. We showed them that determination and courage can overcome any advantage. I am coming home soon. I love you all." The peace negotiations took 3 weeks. Ambassador Kyle Preston led the human delegation, and he drove a hard bargain. Humanity received official recognition of all their territorial claims. They received compensation for war damages. And most importantly, they received a permanent seat on the Galactic Council with full voting rights. "You understand this changes everything," one council member said to Kyle during a break in negotiations. "Your species will now help make decisions that affect the entire galaxy." "We understand," Kyle replied. "And we take that responsibility seriously. We did not want this war. We wanted to be left alone to build our civilization in peace. But since you forced us to fight, we fought with everything we had. Now we will work with you to make sure this kind of war never happens again." Dr. Emma Rhodes received a personal commendation from Admiral Carter for her technological innovations that had helped win the war. She accepted it graciously, but privately. She was already thinking about the next challenge. Peace would bring new opportunities for research and development, ways to improve human life that did not involve weapons. Captain Jake Morrison brought the Valiant back to Earth orbit and looked down at the blue and white planet that humanity called home. He had left Earth as a captain with a new ship and a difficult mission. He was returning as a hero who had helped save humanity from subjugation. "Admiral Carter wants to see you," Sophie Grant said, appearing beside him. "Something about a promotion." Jake smiled. "I do not need a promotion. I just need some shore leave and a chance to sleep in a real bed." "You will probably get both," Sophie said, returning his smile. The welcome home ceremony was massive. Millions of people lined the streets as veterans marched past, cheering and waving flags. The crews of every ship that had fought in the war were honored. The families of those who had died were given medals and the gratitude of a civilization they had helped preserve. Commander Alex Chen and his special operations team received classified commendations for their role in the Battle of Terra Nova. Their names would never be public, but they knew what they had accomplished. They had turned the tide of the war with one daring mission. Admiral Lisa Carter stood before the assembled representatives of humanity and gave a speech that would be remembered for generations. 6 months ago, we faced a choice. We could have backed down when the Galactic Council threatened us. We could have abandoned our colonies and retreated to Earth, accepting that we had no rights beyond what more powerful species granted us. Many people would have understood that choice. Many would have said it was the smart, practical decision. She paused, looking out at the crowd. But we chose to fight. Jake Morrison stood at the window of his quarters, staring out at the massive structure of Apex Prime. The station hung in the void like a giant wheel, its lights twinkling against the darkness of space. Ships from 100 different worlds docked at its ports. This was supposed to be the center of peace and justice in the galaxy. Jake had believed that once. Now he wasn't so sure. He adjusted his collar and checked his reflection one last time. His suit was pressed perfectly, his tie straight. He looked like a diplomat should look. Calm, professional, ready to negotiate. But inside, his stomach twisted with worry. Today's meeting could change everything for humanity. A knock at the door broke his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Colonel Lisa Grant entered, her military uniform crisp and formal. She carried a datapad and looked as serious as always. Behind her came Ryan Cooper, younger and less experienced, but sharp as a knife. Ryan handled the paperwork and details that kept their mission running. "The council chamber is ready for us," Lisa said. "We have 30 minutes. Jake nodded. "Any last-minute intelligence?" Lisa's jaw tightened. "Nothing good?" The Valkyrie delegation arrived with twice the usual security. The Corvan Empire brought 3 generals instead of 1. The Genthi are being quiet, which is never a good sign. "They're making a show of force," Ryan added. "They want us to feel small before we even enter the room." Jake picked up his briefcase. Inside were documents, evidence, and humanity's formal proposals. He hoped they wouldn't need the backup plans tucked in the secure folder at the bottom. But hope wasn't strategy. They walked through the corridors of Apex Prime in silence. Other delegates passed them, species from across the galaxy. Some nodded politely, others looked away. A few stared with open hostility. Jake had been doing this job for 5 years now, and he could read the mood of the station. Today it felt hostile. The council chamber was enormous. The ceiling rose 50 feet above them, covered in displays showing star systems and trade routes. Seats arranged in a circle could hold representatives from 200 worlds. Today, most of those seats were filled. Word had spread that something important was happening. At the center of the circle sat the High Council table. 3 species controlled the Galactic Council, though they pretended all voices mattered equally. The Valkyrie supremacy held the chair position this cycle. Their representative, Valthorin, sat at the center. He was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His species had been traveling the stars for 10,000 years. They thought that made them wise. Jake thought it made them arrogant. To Valthorin's left sat the Genthi representative. The Genthi looked almost human but weren't. Their eyes were too large, their movements too precise. They calculated everything. Emotion was weakness to them. They controlled most of the galaxy's banking and trade networks. To the right sat General Corvan of the Corvan Empire. The Corvans were warriors, 7 feet tall with thick, armor-like skin and powerful builds. They respected strength and nothing else. Corvan had killed in personal combat, Jake knew. Many times. Jake, Lisa, and Ryan took their assigned seats. The human section was small, off to one side. A position that showed exactly what the council thought of Earth. Valthorin stood. The chamber fell silent. "This council recognizes the human delegation," he said. His voice echoed through the chamber. "We convene today to address matters of territorial expansion and violations of established boundaries." Jake felt his hands tighten on the armrests. "Here it comes," he thought. "Humanity has been part of this. Galactic community for 50 standard cycles," Valthorin continued. "In that time, you have been granted privileges of trade, access to knowledge, and the protection of council law. In return, you agreed to abide by the regulations that keep peace among the stars. Velthorn's four hands moved in gestures that Jake had learned meant disapproval. Yet humanity has established colonies on 4 worlds within contested space. You have expanded your fleet beyond agreed limits. You have developed weapons technology without council oversight. These actions threaten the stability we have maintained for millennia. Jake started to rise, but Velthorn held up a hand. You will have your chance to speak, Ambassador Morrison. First, you will hear the council's decision. The Genthi representative activated a hologram. 4 star systems appeared, highlighted in red. Jake recognized them immediately. New colonies established in the last 3 years. Worlds that humanity had spent enormous resources to settle. Worlds where human families now lived. These colonies are hereby declared in violation of council territory law, the Genthi said in a flat voice. They must be evacuated within 90 standard days. All human presence must be removed, murmurs ran through the chamber. Jake saw some delegates nodding approval. Others looked uncomfortable but said nothing. General Corvin stood next. Furthermore, Earth's military fleet will be reduced to defensive forces only. No vessels above cruiser class will be permitted. Human ships will not travel beyond the Sol sector without council authorization. Lisa leaned close to Jake. They're boxing us in, she whispered. They want us trapped in our own star system. Velthorn spoke again. Finally, humanity will accept council oversight of your government and military operations. Peacekeepers will be stationed in Sol system to ensure compliance. These terms are not negotiable. You have 10 standard days to signal your acceptance. The chamber waited. Every eye turned to Jake. He stood slowly. His mind raced through options, through the speeches he had prepared, through the diplomatic language he had practiced. Then he remembered something his grandfather had told him long ago. Sometimes the only power you have is the power to say no. May I present evidence to this council? Jake asked, his voice calm. Velthorn waved a hand dismissively. If you must. Jake activated his own datapad. 6 months ago, the science vessel Horizon was destroyed. 2,000 men, women, and children died. The official report called it an equipment malfunction. He projected images into the chamber. The Horizon had been beautiful once, a ship designed for deep space exploration. The wreckage showed something different. Burn patterns, impact damage, the signatures of weapons fire. Our investigation found evidence that contradicts the official story, Jake continued. We found energy signatures matching Corvan plasma cannons. We recovered data fragments from the Horizon's final transmission. He played audio. Static filled the chamber, then a voice, terrified and desperate. This is Captain Williams of the Horizon. We are under attack. Unknown vessels firing on us. They're not responding to hails. We need... The transmission ended in a scream and more static. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted. Some demanded Jake be removed. Others called for an investigation. General Corvin stood, his face twisted with rage. Jake raised his voice over the chaos. We have more. Communications between council members discussing how to handle the human problem. Financial records showing systematic sabotage of human trade agreements. Evidence of technology theft from human research stations. He locked eyes with Velthorn. You didn't bring us here to negotiate. You brought us here to force our submission. And when we didn't submit fast enough, you killed 2,000 of our people to send a message. Velthorn's expression didn't change, but Jake saw something flicker in his eyes. Not guilt. Annoyance at being caught. These accusations are baseless, Velthorn said coldly. This council has shown humanity nothing but patience and guidance. If you cannot accept the wisdom of your elders, perhaps humanity is not mature enough for galactic society, that word. Elders, as if humans were children to be scolded and controlled. Jake looked at Lisa. She nodded once. They had talked about this possibility. They had prepared for it. Jake had hoped it wouldn't come to this. But hope was a luxury they could no longer afford. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sealed document. The seal bore the mark of Earth's government. Every delegate in the chamber would recognize its significance. I came here hoping to find justice, Jake said quietly. I came here believing that truth mattered, that law mattered. that the lives of my people mattered to this council. He broke the seal on the document. I was instructed by my government that if this council proved to be corrupt beyond redemption, I have full authority to deliver this message. The chamber held its breath. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. We invoke the right of severance under the ancient accords. Article 7. We sever all diplomatic, economic, and social ties with council authority. No council ship will be permitted in human space. No council law will be recognized by Earth or her colonies. Chaos exploded, delegates screamed. Some demanded Jake's arrest. Others tried to shout over each other. Velthorin slammed his hands on the table, calling for order. Jake didn't wait for order to be restored. He turned to Lisa. Execute Protocol Nightfall. Lisa activated her military communicator. All human vessels, this is Colonel Grant, authorization code Morrison 77 Alpha. Execute Protocol Nightfall immediately. Repeat, execute Nightfall. Across the galaxy on ships and stations and outposts, humans received the message. They had drilled for this. Within minutes, every human ship began emergency jumps to faster-than-light travel. Diplomatic vessels, merchant ships, research stations, everything with a human crew. 3 months had passed since the humans walked out of the council chamber. 3 months since Jake Morrison had declared humanity's withdrawal from galactic society. 3 months that changed everything on the Velkari homeworld of Velthor Prime. Ambassador Krivesh sat in his office reviewing reports. The room was elegant, filled with artifacts from thousands of years of Velkari history. His people had built empires when most species were still learning to make fire. They had guided the galaxy for millennia. Now, everything was falling apart. The datapad in his hands showed failure after failure. Medical facilities across 12 worlds had shut down. The equipment was human-made, using human technology. Without replacement parts and human technicians, the systems were dying. Thousands of patients had been moved to older, less effective facilities. Some had died waiting. Krivesh moved to the next report. Agricultural systems failing on 5 colony worlds. Again, human technology. The humans had developed solutions for growing food in harsh environments, systems that worked better and cheaper than anything else available. The Velkari had been happy to buy those systems. Now the maintenance contracts were void. Crops were failing. Food shortages were beginning. Communication networks, transportation systems, entertainment platforms all showed the same pattern. Human innovation had woven itself into the fabric of galactic society so completely that removing it was like pulling threads from cloth. Everything was unraveling. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. His aide entered, looking worried. Ambassador, the protests are growing. Another demonstration outside the council building. They're demanding we bring the humans back. Krivesh set down the datapad. How many this time? 50,000. And it's spreading to other cities. The ambassador walked to his window. Below, he could see the crowds gathering in the plaza. Signs and banners waved in the air. Most called for reconciliation with humanity. Some called for the arrest of Velthorin and the other council leaders who had pushed humanity away. What do the people know? Krivesh asked quietly. Everything, sir. The humans broadcast the evidence before they left. Every world in the galaxy received it. The recordings of council members planning to sabotage human interests. The attack on the horizon. The plan to force human submission. Krivesh closed his eyes. Velthorin had been so certain that controlling the information flow would work as it always had. But the humans had learned council systems too well. They had timed their data dump perfectly. Every news network, every public forum, every communication channel had received the evidence simultaneously. By the time council censors tried to stop it, billions of people had already seen the truth. Schedule an emergency meeting of the diplomatic corps, Krivesh said. We need to discuss options. Yes, sir. Though I should mention the Genthi are requesting the same. So are the Corvans. Of course they are, Krivesh thought. They're drowning 2 across the galaxy on Genitar, the Genthi homeworld. The situation was worse. The Genthi collective prided itself on logic and efficiency. Their economy was built on careful calculations, precise predictions, and controlled markets. The human departure had broken their models. Director Kethsar reviewed the economic projections in his private chamber. The numbers were devastating. Human creativity had become the galaxy's most valuable export. Human entertainment, human art, human music, human literature, all of it had dominated galactic culture. The Genthi had made enormous profits distributing and selling human creative works. Now it was gone. Every human broadcast had gone silent. Every human artist had withdrawn their work from galactic markets. The entertainment industry had collapsed overnight. Stock values dropped by 40% in the first week. They hadn't recovered, but the economic damage went deeper. Humans thought differently than other species. Where other races followed established patterns, humans experimented. They took risks. They combined ideas in unexpected ways. That innovation had sparked new industries, new technologies, new ways of doing business. Genthi corporations had invested heavily in partnerships with human companies. All those investments were now worthless. The contracts were void. The partnerships dissolved. Trillions of credits had simply vanished. Kethsar's assistant entered without knocking, something that never happened unless the situation was critical. Director, the financial markets are in panic. 3 major banks have suspended trading. There are runs on 2 others. The council is demanding we stabilize the situation. How? Kethsar asked bitterly. We built our economy on a foundation that included humanity. That foundation is gone. We can't simply replace it. The council suggests we seize human assets within our territory. Kethsar laughed, a harsh sound. What assets? The humans took everything that could move. What's left is infrastructure. We don't know how to maintain and empty buildings. We'd be seizing our own losses. He stood and paced. Contact every financial institution in the collective. Tell them to prepare for long-term instability. This isn't something we can fix quickly. It might not be something we can fix at all. On the Corvan homeworld of Corval, General Vornak had different concerns. He stood in the war room, studying tactical displays. His scales, dark red and thick as armor, caught the light from the holographic projections. Around him, junior officers waited nervously. Show me the border again, Vornak ordered. The display shifted. A line of red-marked human space, starting from their home system of Sol and extending to their colonies. Before the withdrawal, that border had been porous. Human ships had traveled freely. Council ships had access to human ports for refueling and repairs. Now, the border was absolute. Human defense platforms lined every approach. Automated warning systems challenged any ship that came too close. 3 council vessels had tested the border in the first month. All 3 had been destroyed within seconds of crossing into human space. No warnings. No second chances. Just immediate, overwhelming firepower. What about the probe we sent through? Vornak asked. An intelligence officer stepped forward. It transmitted for 7 minutes before being destroyed, General. We received significant data. Show me. Images appeared. Massive construction projects. Shipyards building vessels 3 times larger than anything in the human fleet before the withdrawal. Colonies expanding at impossible speeds. Energy signatures suggesting new weapons technology. How is this possible? One of the junior officers asked. They've been isolated for only 3 months. This level of construction should take years. Vornak knew the answer. He had studied human history during the years humanity first joined the Council. Humans thrive under pressure. When they face extinction, they don't surrender. They adapt. They innovate. They work together in ways other species cannot match. He pointed at the display. Before, humans were part of a galactic community. They followed Council regulations. They moved at the pace the Council allowed. Now they're alone and angry. There are no rules holding them back anymore. Another officer spoke. General, the Council is discussing a military response. They want to force humanity back to the negotiating table. Vornak turned sharply. What do you mean? A grand fleet? 600 ships from the three major powers. Enough force to overwhelm human defenses and establish a blockade. The general felt cold fear, something he rarely experienced. That would be a mistake. But sir, we have numerical superiority. 600 ships against what intelligence estimates as less than 200 human vessels. Vornak brought up historical files. Look at human military history. Look at how they fight. They don't think like we do. Corvan tactics focus on honor and strength. Velkari tactics focus on superiority and control. Genthi tactics focus on calculated advantage. Human tactics focus on winning, whatever it takes. He showed them examples. Human wars where smaller forces had defeated larger ones through cunning and sacrifice. Battles where humans had used their own ships as weapons. Commanders who had made decisions that defied all logic but somehow worked. They're unpredictable, Vornak continued. They don't fight to prove superiority. They fight to survive. And they're very, very good at surviving. So what do we do, General? Vornak stared at the display showing human space. We prepare. We strengthen our defenses. And we hope the Council doesn't do something stupid. But he knew they would. The Council couldn't afford to look weak. Not now, when other species were watching. Not when the carefully maintained order was crumbling, back on Velthor Prime. The emergency diplomatic meeting had convened. Krivesh sat at a table with representatives from dozens of worlds. The mood was tense. We must re-establish contact with humanity, said a delegate from the Mirani Federation. Our medical crisis is becoming critical. Agreed, added the Trellan representative. Our economy cannot survive this isolation. The humans made their choice, said a Velkari hardliner. They walked away. They violated their oaths to the Council. We should not reward their insolence. Krivesh raised a hand for silence. The question is not whether we want contact with humanity. The question is whether humanity wants contact with us. They invoke the right of severance. That's their legal right under the ancient accords. Then we change the law, the hardliner insisted. We cannot simply change laws that have existed for 10,000 years. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the EDF Defiance, her flagship and the pride of Earth's new defense fleet. Through the viewscreen she could see the other ships of her command. 80 vessels in total, arranged in defensive formation around Earth's solar system, 80 ships to face 600. Admiral. Long-range sensors are picking up jump signatures, her tactical officer called out. Lieutenant Chris Bennett had been with her for 5 years. His voice stayed calm, but she could hear the tension underneath. How many? Kate asked. Still calculating. Initial count shows 400 plus. More signatures appearing. They're jumping in waves? Kate nodded. The Council fleet was arriving exactly as intelligence had predicted. They wanted a show of force. They wanted humanity to see the armada and surrender before the first shot was fired. They didn't understand humans at all. All ships to battle stations, Kate ordered. Execute formation Delta 7. Activate all defense platforms. And send the message. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Amy Pierce, nodded and opened a channel. Kate's voice would now reach every Council ship entering the system. Attention Council fleet. This is Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Earth Defense Force. You have violated our sovereign space. You have one chance to turn around and leave. If you do not, we will defend our home with everything we have. On the lead Council ship, the massive Velkari battlecruiser Supreme Destiny, Admiral Jankar of the Corvan Empire listened to the message. His officers waited for his response. Around him, the bridge of the Supreme Destiny hummed with activity. It was the largest warship in the fleet, bristling with weapons and protected by shields that could withstand a direct hit from a small moon. Jankar laughed. It was a deep rumbling sound. She threatens us with 80 ships? Record my response. The communications officer signaled ready. Human Admiral, you face the combined might of the 3 greatest powers in the galaxy. 600 warships. Weapons that have maintained peace for millennia. Surrender now, and we may show mercy. Continue this foolishness, and we will dismantle your fleet, occupy your worlds, and force you back to the negotiating table. You have 5 minutes to comply. He cut the transmission and turned to his fleet commander. Bring us into weapons range. Standard battle formation. Show them what true power looks like. The Council fleet began to advance, a massive wall of ships moving toward Earth. On worlds across the galaxy, billions watched the live feeds. News networks had scrambled to get coverage. This was history happening. The upstart humans facing the might of the Council. Everyone expected it to be over quickly. On the Defiance, Kate watched the enemy fleet approach. Her crew was silent, waiting for orders. She felt their fear. She felt her own fear. But fear was just another tool, and she knew how to use it. Chris, what's the status on our surprise packages? Bennett checked his displays. All stealth drones are in position, Admiral. The Council fleet passed right by them. They have no idea. Kate smiled grimly. Good, Amy. Send one more message to the fleet. Tell them we're about to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity. She took a deep breath. All ships, weapons free. Execute attack pattern Morrison. The battle began. The human ships suddenly accelerated forward at speeds the Council hadn't anticipated. Newer engines, developed in the 3 months of isolation, pushed the vessels to limits that would have torn apart older designs. The gap between the fleets closed in seconds instead of minutes. They're charging us? Shankar said in disbelief. 80 ships charging 600? Have they lost their minds? His tactical officer shouted a warning. Energy spikes detected. They're firing. The human ships opened up with every weapon they had. But these weren't the weapons the Council knew. These were new designs, products of desperate innovation and unlimited testing. Railguns fired projectiles at near light speed. The Council shields, designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, were less effective against solid matter moving so fast. The first volley punched through 3 Valkyrie cruisers, leaving gaping holes in their hulls. Plasma torpedoes, redesigned and supercharged, burned hotter than anything in the Council arsenal. They ate through shields like acid through paper. A Genthi battleship took 5 hits in rapid succession. Its shields collapsed and secondary explosions ripped it apart from inside. Return fire. Jankar roared. All ships, concentrate fire on their flagship. The Council fleet responded with overwhelming firepower. Hundreds of weapons fired simultaneously. Energy beams that could cut through asteroids. Missiles that could track targets across star systems. The combined firepower could have destroyed a small planet. The Defiance's point defense systems activated. This was another human innovation. Automated turrets tracking thousands of targets per second. Computers running calculations faster than any organic mind. Small projectiles fired in precise patterns. The incoming missiles exploded before reaching their targets. Energy beams were dispersed by clouds of metallic chaff. What few weapons made it through hit shields that held barely. Damage report, Kate called out. Shields at 70%. Hull intact. We're fine, Admiral, Bennett reported. Kate nodded. Phase 1 complete. They had survived the first exchange and proven their defenses worked. Now came Phase 2, activate the drones. Hidden throughout the system, the stealth drones that the Council fleet had passed came to life. Small, unmanned, and packed with explosives and weapons, they had been waiting in silent running mode. Now they attacked from behind, hitting the Council's rear formations. Explosions blossomed through the enemy fleet. Ships that thought they were safe suddenly found themselves under attack from multiple angles. Panic spread through Council formations as they realized the humans had planned this ambush. Break formation, Jankar ordered. Defensive spread. Find those drones? But breaking formation was exactly what Kate wanted. A coordinated fleet of 600 ships was dangerous. 600 individual ships trying to fight separate battles was manageable. All fighters, launch, Kate ordered. From the human ships, small craft shot out like angry hornets. These were one-person fighters, fast and agile. They darted between the larger council vessels. Too small and quick for the big weapons to track effectively, Lieutenant Danny Price flew his fighter, the Reaper, straight into the heart of the enemy formation. His targeting computer screamed warnings as ships locked onto him. He didn't care. He wove between them, firing as he went. His cannons weren't powerful enough to destroy a capital ship, but they could hit weak points. Engine ports, sensor arrays, communications dishes dot around him. Other fighters did the same. They were like wolves harrying a herd of elephants. Not strong enough to kill, but fast enough to wound and frustrate. On the Supreme Destiny, chaos reigned. We're being hit from multiple directions. The drones are targeting our engines. The fighters are too fast to hit. Our formations are scattered. Jankar slammed his fist on the command console. This is impossible. We have 600 ships. They have 80. We should be crushing them. His tactical officer looked up from his screen, his face pale. Admiral, we've lost 47 ships. 47 in the first 10 minutes? That's not possible. I'm reading the data correctly, sir. The humans are fighting like nothing we've ever seen. They're not following any tactical doctrine we know. Their movements are unpredictable. They're taking risks that no sane commander would take, but somehow it's working. Captain Megan Torres commanded the human destroyer Relentless. Her ship had taken heavy damage. Hull breaches on 3 decks. Shields down to 20%. Engine power failing. She should retreat. Any reasonable commander would retreat. Instead, she looked at the massive Valkyrie carrier ahead. Launching fighters to attack Earth, the carrier was heavily armed and protected. A destroyer couldn't hurt it under normal circumstances. All hands, this is the captain, Megan said over the ship-wide comm. We're about to do something crazy. I need everyone to get to the escape pods now. You have 2 minutes. Her bridge crew stared at her. Captain? Her executive officer asked. I said go. That's an order. I'll hold her steady. Move. They understood then. They didn't want to leave, but they followed orders. The crew evacuated rapidly, practiced efficiency getting them into pods. Megan sat alone on the bridge, her hands on the controls. She aimed the Relentless straight at the carrier. Full engine power, everything the damage systems could give her, the carrier's defensive weapons fired. Energy beams tore into the Relentless. Armor plating vaporized. Internal systems failed. Megan felt the ship dying around her. She kept her hands steady. For the horizon, she whispered. For Earth. The Relentless struck the carrier at full speed. Its reactor set to overload detonated on impact. The explosion tore through the carrier's center, breaking its spine. Secondary explosions followed as fuel and munitions cooked off. The carrier split in half, both pieces tumbling away, trailing atmosphere and bodies across the battlefield. Emergency pods from the Relentless were picked up by other human ships. They had lost their captain, but Megan Torres had just destroyed a ship worth 1,000 of her own. The battle raged for 7 hours. In space, time becomes strange. Minutes feel like hours during combat. Decisions made in seconds determine who lives and who dies. Commander Kevin Walsh led a squadron of 6 ships in a maneuver that... The news reached the Valkyrie homeworld 48 hours after the battle. Ambassador Krivesh sat in the emergency council meeting, watching the holographic replay for the 3rd time. Each viewing made it worse, not better. 600 ships had entered human space. 40 had returned. Most of those were so damaged they would never fight again. 374 ships destroyed. Over 200,000 Council military personnel dead. The greatest military disaster in recorded history, and it had taken humans only 7 hours to accomplish it. Valthorin sat at the head of the table, his forearms hanging limp. The proud council chair looked like he had aged 100 years overnight. Around the table, representatives from the 3 major powers sat in stunned silence. How? Someone finally asked. How did 80 ships defeat 600? General Vornak of the Corvan Empire spoke. He had opposed the attack from the beginning. Now he had to explain why his warning had been ignored. They fought differently than we anticipated. They used weapons we didn't know they had. They employed tactics we've never encountered. And they fought with a determination we couldn't match. They sacrificed their own ships, a Genthi military analyst added. Deliberately crashed them into our larger vessels. What kind of species does that? A desperate one, Krivesh said quietly. A cornered one. A species that decided dying free was better than living under our control? Velthorin finally spoke. His voice was hollow. The other species are withdrawing from the Council. 17 member worlds have formally announced their departure in the last day. 20 more are expected to follow. The room absorbed this news. The Council, which had governed the galaxy for thousands of years, was collapsing. Not from external conquest, but from internal loss of faith. They saw what we did to humanity, Krivesh said. They saw us try to force a species into submission. They saw us lose catastrophically. Now they wonder if they'll be next. Why would anyone trust us now? We must rebuild, insisted a Valkyrie military commander. Gather a new fleet, larger. Better prepared, we cannot let this defeat stand. Vornak slammed his hand on the table. And how do you propose we do that? Our shipyards are working at capacity to replace what we lost. Our economy is failing. Our people are protesting in the streets. And even if we built another fleet, what makes you think the result would be different? Because next time we'll know what to expect, will we? Vornak challenged. We thought we knew what to expect this time. We were wrong. Humans adapt faster than we can plan. They innovate faster than we can respond. By the time we build a new fleet, they'll have new weapons we can't imagine. The meeting dissolved into arguments. Some wanted revenge. Others wanted peace. A few suggested simply leaving humanity alone and focusing on internal problems. No consensus emerged on the Genthi homeworld. Director Kethser faced a different crisis. The financial markets had crashed completely. When news of the military defeat reached the trading floors, panic selling began. Stocks lost 80% of their value in hours. Banks collapsed. The entire economic system that the Genthi had carefully built over millennia was coming apart. He stood before the collective council, a group of the most powerful Genthi leaders. They wanted answers. They wanted solutions. He had neither. The economic damage is catastrophic, Kethser reported. Markets have lost confidence not just in military ventures but in the council itself. Without trust in galactic stability, trade has ground to a halt. Ships are staying in port. Merchants are hoarding goods. Credit has frozen. Give us numbers, demanded one of the council members. Kethser pulled up projections. Within 3 months, 40% of Genthi corporations will face bankruptcy. Within 6 months, our government will be unable to pay for basic services. We face the worst economic depression in our history. What about seizing human assets? Claiming their technology as war reparations? What assets? Kethser asked bitterly. What technology? We can't even reach human space now. Their borders are locked down tighter than before. And even if we could, taking their property by force would only prove them right about us. Every other species watching would know we're thieves as well as failures. He paused, then spoke the words he knew they didn't want to hear. Our only option is to negotiate with humanity. Not from a position of strength, but as equals. Perhaps even as supplicants. We need their trade. We need their technology. We need them more than they need us. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. The idea of the proud Genthi collective begging humanity for help was intolerable. But Kethser knew the truth. Pride was a luxury they could no longer afford. On smaller worlds throughout the galaxy, the reaction was different. On the planet Miran, where medical systems had been failing for months, the government made a decision. Ambassador Trellin sent a message directly to Earth, bypassing the council completely. To the government of Earth, greetings. We are the Mirani Federation. We wish to apologize for the actions of the council. We had no part in the attack on your vessel Horizon. We did not support the attempted invasion of your space. We ask nothing except the chance to speak with you as equals. Our people are suffering. We need medical technology that only you possess. We are willing to pay fair prices and establish honest trade. Please respond. Within a week, 30 other worlds sent similar messages. They wanted nothing to do with the Council anymore. They wanted direct relationships with humanity based on mutual respect and honest dealing. Jake Morrison, who had walked out of the Council chamber 3 months ago, now found himself drowning in diplomatic communications. He sat in his office on Earth reviewing requests for meetings, trade agreements, and alliances. His staff worked around the clock trying to keep up. Lisa Grant entered, carrying more data pads. Another 12 worlds requesting direct diplomatic relations. 4 asking for humanitarian aid. 6 proposing mutual defense pacts. Jake rubbed his tired eyes. The galaxy is reorganizing itself around us. We didn't ask for this. No, Lisa agreed. But it's happening anyway. The Council provided structure, even if it was corrupt structure. Now that structure is gone, everyone is scrambling to find new partnerships, new alliances, new ways to organize their affairs. What's the status of our fleet? Admiral Sullivan is overseeing repairs. We lost 18 ships, but we're building replacements. She estimates we'll be back to full strength in 6 months. But Jake, she's also warning that we need to expand. If we're going to guarantee security for potential allies, we need a bigger fleet. Jake stood and walked to his window. Below, the streets of Geneva bustled with activity. Earth had changed, humanity had changed. They had been tested and they had passed. Now they were becoming something new. Set up a meeting with President Harper, Jake said. We need to discuss our long-term strategy. We didn't want to be galactic leaders, but I think that's what we're becoming. On the Kovan homeworld, General Vornak met with his senior officers. They gathered in a secure military facility, away from politicians and civilians. Here they could speak honestly. Show me the analysis, Vornak ordered. A tactical officer brought up displays. We've studied the battle footage extensively. The humans displayed several advantages. First, their weapons technology exceeded our expectations. Second, their defensive systems were more effective than anything we've encountered. Third, their pilots and commanders made decisions faster and with more creativity than our people. Why? Vornak asked. We train our warriors from birth. We have centuries of military tradition. How are humans better? Another officer spoke. It's not about training, General. It's about thinking. Kovans fight with honor and courage following proven tactics. Humans fight to win by any means necessary. They improvise. They take risks we consider foolish. But those risks work because they're unexpected, Vornak nodded slowly. They think like predators. We think like warriors. There's a difference. What do we do, General? The Council wants us to prepare for another attack. No, Vornak said firmly. I'm recommending we open direct communication with humanity, not as enemies, as potential allies. His officers looked shocked. But General, they destroyed our fleet. They killed thousands of our warriors. Because we attacked them first, Vornak pointed out. Because we followed the Council's foolish orders. The Corvan Empire respects strength and honor. Humanity has demonstrated both. I see no honor in continuing a war we cannot win. He stood tall. I will present this recommendation to the Imperial Council. We should learn from this defeat, not repeat it. The humans don't want to conquer us. They want to be left alone. We can give them that. It was a radical position for a Corvan general. But Vornak had survived decades of combat by knowing when to fight and when to find another path, on Earth. President Nicole Harper addressed her government in an emergency session. The cabinet room was packed. Everyone wanted to hear what came next. The galaxy is in chaos, Nicole began. The Council is collapsing. Dozens of worlds are reaching out to us. We face a choice. We can close our borders and isolate ourselves completely, or we can engage with the galaxy on our terms. If we isolate, we'll be safe, argued the Secretary of Defense. No more conflicts, no more battles. We focus on ourselves. But we'll also be alone, Jake Morrison countered. And eventually the